Thank you, folks. This was a great discussion. As Vera mentioned, you can also connect with our speakers on the DevRelX Slack, one click away just below the stage. I'd also like to remind everyone in the audience that you can as well share your views on driving and measuring success of your DevRel efforts in our 9th Developer Program Leader Survey, which is currently live. The quickest way to participate within the platform is to visit the info stand, where you'll find a survey button as item number 2. I would now like to pass on the mic to my colleague, Flora Botos, to introduce our next session.
Thank you, Natasha. I'm thrilled to introduce this one. You might be familiar with the host of our next deep dive session, Draft.dev, from one of the previous DevRelX community session that we hosted earlier this year. If you missed that one, make sure that you join the DevRelX Slack to attend further sessions. The feedback following their last session was so great that we decided to bring the team back for more. This time, Clayton and Matt will talk to you about how to ensure the success of your technical content efforts. Over to you, Clayton.
Hey, thanks for having me. As you noted, Clayton Kast, run the account management team here at Draft.dev. We're a technical content marketing firm. I'm going to share my screen real quick. Appreciate everyone's patience. And as the host noted, we presented last year about the best type of technical content to write, or what we at least find to be the most effective. Over the last year, we've noticed, however, that a lot of our clients have needed assistance with what happens after creating that actual content, which is ensuring the success of it once you start promoting it and start trying to measure the ROI of that content. So we're going to dive into the finer details of that today. Just to touch on our agenda, I'm going to go over what we've seen drive success and failure amongst our client base, define the specific steps we find to be the best to seeing success with your technical content. And then at the end, we'll be joined by our lead content consultant, Matt, who's going to help with Q&A. As long as I don't ramble too much, we should have about 10 minutes or so at the end of the talk to answer any questions. Then also, I'm going to share my LinkedIn information at the end of the conversation. This is a topic that I could talk about for 3 hours. We have a bunch of additional resources I'm going to share and post on LinkedIn immediately following the conversation. And any other opportunity I have to share that content, I'll follow up there as well. But if you're anything like me, whenever you join any of these conferences, the first question I always have is, why should I listen to this guy in the first place? It's on the screen in front of me. So just to back up why I might be a little bit of a subject matter expert, when it comes to ensuring the success of your technical content, it is all we do. It's what our organization does for a living. We work with over 300 engineers to actually execute our content for over 100 clients. We bootstrapped ourselves about 2 years ago without any private funding, have gone to where we are today. I've worked with every company, large or small, everything from the publicly traded with an employee base of in the 5 figures down to the founder who just got his first round of funding. And you might be going, Clayton, well, you just told me that all you do is write content, but you're about to talk to us about strategy. How can we trust you know what you're talking about? Of those 100 clients or plus that we've worked with, we've gotten to see exactly what works and what doesn't on the strategy front. We've gotten to see just about every attempt that you can possibly make to make technical content successful. And we've gotten to pull quite a few pieces of insight through all that experience. So through all that insight, we've come to 2 major observations within our client base and the organizations that we work with. And the first is that most companies wildly underestimate what's involved in content creation. Now, most of it, just think about the creation itself. There's a couple that come in and understanding that there's some prior planning that needs to take place on the content writing, and then some promotion on the back end. But a lot of people don't start the process early enough when you start thinking about the goals you're actually trying to achieve, the strategy behind it, the instrumentation you're going to use. Then the promotion itself is typically a lot more intensive than people expect it to be. Then that's not even getting into content refreshes, building backlinks, all that fun stuff. It's interesting that I guess because it's not that content marketing is new or technical content marketing is new, people just don't quite have the same experience level that they have with traditional marketing efforts and don't apply a lot of the same strategy to it. And that leads to what we often call the content failure cycle, which oddly enough sort of applies to DevRel a lot in general, in that you get a new founder that gets his first batch of money. You get a larger organization that finally gets to hire someone to manage developer relations, developer marketing, or you have that traditional marketing department that finally gets to build out that role within their team. They see all over the internet that technical content marketing is where they need to go to reach our audience most effectively. So they start throwing stuff at the wall, FDR style, just seeing what sticks and trying their best. And these random ideas, well, no surprise, they struggle to tie ROI to them. They might be able to see some success and viewer metrics and stuff like that, but that's really not showing you how you're making money off of it. Next comes the conversation with the leader where you go, well, we think it worked well, but we're not quite sure. And then all of a sudden, that role is either fired, or they go off to another opportunity, or they hop around to another startup. We unfortunately see a ton of turnover that it can oftentimes be tied back to not being able to express the ROI of the technical content efforts. You don't just have to take my word for it. There's actually a great study that came out recently. It's called the State of DevRel 2022. You can follow this web link I have written here on this slide, stateofdeveloperrelations.com. It was administered by an organization known as Revere Communications. They interviewed about 215 developer relations professionals across the board, all over the world, companies large and small, some that were specific DevRel organizations, some that were teams within organizations, some that were parts of startups. And amongst that base, 57%, almost 60% said content marketing is the most effective tactic for reaching developers. However, and a concerning metric here, over 70% said of that, which aspects of content production pipeline are you responsible for? Over 70% said idea generation and production, while less than 40% said promotion is part of it. And that all gets summed up in one quote that I think I hear in one way or another from a lot of the organizations we work with. I was sitting in on a Discord review of this report. We got to the end of the Q&A session, and one of the individuals goes, over the past year, I read about 20 blog posts. It was really hard. It took a lot of time out of my day. And then when I went to go speak to leadership about it, they're like, okay, cool, great job. But how does this calculate into our ROI? How is that improving our organization? How is that driving sales? So we have this large group of people that are very well of how effective content marketing is, specifically technical content marketing is in our space. And yet we're struggling to show it to our leadership. We're struggling to prove it to ourselves, prove it to our founders. So that has really led us here at Draft.dev to three main points that we see that differentiates our successful clients versus the ones that are struggling to prove the ROI on this content. The first and the most important one is do not do content for the sake of doing content. That should probably apply to anything you do in your day-to-day job. I know that seems obvious, but people tend to like to ride the wave of trends, which can be a good thing. Like we said, technical content marketing is effective. We've seen the numbers for it, but don't do it just because a website told you it's the most effective way to go about it. Know exactly why you're going into it, what goals you're trying to achieve with that technical content marketing. And then once you set those goals out, have a plan to measure your success and define your ROI before you even get started on creating that content. You need to know how you're going to achieve those goals, and more importantly, how you're going to show those numbers to leadership. Traditional marketing circles, viewership, web page viewership may be enough, but we need something a little bit more in our line of work. And then last but not least, a promotional strategy is essential to successful content marketing. We see so many clients that come in and they, I guess, are just hoping to get lucky with a post going viral, which does happen. Don't get me wrong. Every once in a while, you'll have that one Flutter article that just goes crazy and you get a lot of viewership for it. But that's not the standard, and it's not something that you should rely on, particularly when you're investing in a marketing effort. There's a lot of dollars and effort that goes into content marketing. Make sure you put an equal amount of effort to that promotional strategy. So simply, this breaks down into the 3 points that I'm going to focus on today. Define your why behind your content, technical content marketing, identify your metrics, and build a promotional strategy. You do these 3 things, you'll be doing leaps and bounds better than most people cranking out technical content marketing. And let's be honest, it's sort of a competition at the end of the day because we're all just trying to rank higher than each other on Google, right? So you do these 3, you'll be doing better than 90% of the organizations out there when it comes to promoting your technical content. So define your why. We're about to break into a graphic that you're going to see a lot today. And then as marketers, we have traditionally seen a lot in general. This is the marketing pipeline, right? So on your strategy, we have a lot of clients that come in and we'll put this same thing in front of them and we'll say, what are you trying to achieve with your content marketing? And they will a lot of them will always say, we're trying to do all of it. We're trying to build awareness. We're trying to improve engagement. We're trying to enable sales, which is great if you're a massive organization and you have a massive marketing budget. You probably can throw content at each one of these goals and achieve some success in each of them. But smaller organizations, startups, people that are still going through their rounds of funding, it is best to have a very targeted goal, choosing one of these three, and then identifying the specific goals under each of these three banners that you want to try and achieve. Content marketing is compounding effort. So if you're just sort of throwing things that achieve, so like you write one article that's focused on building awareness, you write another article that's focused on improving the engagement of your product and showing people how to use it. Maybe another is enabling sales. That's not going to work out great in the god that is the Google algorithm, right? If you have a concentrated budget and you really need to focus, figure out which one of these three goals you want to hit, and then the specific goal under that banner, and target all the effort into that so that they can build off of each other and really drive traffic to whichever of those three goals you're trying to achieve. Just some other general tips when it comes to trying to build or outline these goals for your organization. Fewer goals is better than more to start, like I was just saying. Really scale it back. Also, the less goals you have, the easier it is going to be to prove your success to your leadership or whoever's responsible for evaluating you, whether that be your investment organization or your most immediate boss. Start small. Start with one goal, achieve that. You can build upon that, and you can go after more lofty goals as you continue to move on. Make it easy to prove the success for yourself so that you continue to drive funding into what you're trying to achieve. Goals will depend a lot upon your stage of business. This is another point that seems obvious, but often gets forgotten in the craziness that is writing content. If you're early stage, you're going to be focused on building awareness, just trying to let people know that your product exists. Whereas like if you're a very large organization, it really may just be a battle between you and your competitor, and you're having to put out a lot of comparison pieces and roundups, things of that nature. Goals are also going to depend on the type of team you're working in. Are you lucky enough or fortunate enough to be part of an actual DevRel team where you can really focus on reaching and engaging the developers? Are you part of a larger marketing organization that has goals that they need to achieve that may be more focused on B2B sales, things of that nature? And last but not least, the other point I'm going to continue to say throughout this, just so that you walk away and remember it like it's our tagline: creating content just for the sake of creating content is not a good goal. Be specific. So the next step in being successful in your technical content efforts is identifying your metrics. Another thing that said out loud seems incredibly obvious, but gets so often lost when people start producing content for their blogs. Excuse me, everyone. We come back to this graphic I said that we'll be revisiting a lot. So how are you going to measure that success? Whether you're doing building awareness, improving engagement, enabling sales, what's that specific goal? Is it 10,000 page views a month? Are you trying to rank top 3 or top 5 out of your specific keywords? Engagement, are you trying to answer as many support tickets as you possibly can? Are you trying to drive free trial signups to a specific number? And then enabling sales, are you trying to create collateral for your team to help them close their deals? How many deals are you trying to drive and help them close? The more specific with this, the better it's going to be. Like I said, people just aren't as impressed anymore by this like top building awareness metric up here of just saying, well, we had 10,000 individual unique visitors come to the site today. We need to give the people we're working with a little bit more than that these days. If you went through the American school system like me, we've been hearing this since about middle school, but is often forgotten. This is just your friendly reminder to make sure that these goals are smart, make sure they're specific, they're measurable, they're actually achievable, whether that be realistic numbers, or do you even have the technology or the tools to actually measure that specific goal in the first place? Make sure they're relevant to what those goals are, like we were talking about previously. Are you going after DevRel? Is this going after B2B sales, engagement? What's the most relevant to your larger organization goals right now? And then last but not least, time bound. This one is often forgotten, and why I felt it important to bring SMART goals back up, despite us all hearing this throughout our education. Well, I'll speak to a lot of clients during their onboarding where they don't have a set date where they're looking for their success. And how are you going to prove the success of this content you're generating if you don't have a set date to actually measure those numbers and put it in front of the powers that be to show that that content was successful? So never forget number 5 down here. So other questions to consider when figuring out how you're going to measure these goals. Budget is a very important piece of ROI. It's essential. What's the exact number you're going to be applying to the technical content efforts? Does that include your promotional efforts too? You need this number along with the time period so that you can actually say, hey, we invested this much and we're able to drive this much in sales, this much in user engagement, this much in limiting customer service calls, whatever that may be. Number 2 is making sure the team is available. This is the hardest one, particularly in our space, just because honestly, today we've listened to people talk all day about how it's we still sort of have to fight to prove our worth within organizations in the DevRel space a lot of times. And that often means we're small teams. Technical content marketing, technical content development can be people heavy. Even within our own organization here at Draft.dev, what makes us good at what we do is our writers, our editors, our technical content specialists. That's where all of our money is invested. And that's just us as an organization. That's all we do. If you're a team, make sure you have the engineers on staff that are ready to review the content for you. Make sure they have the bandwidth to actually do that. If you're actually going to request your poor engineers actually execute the content for you, make sure that they're capable of doing that. Make sure you have someone, whether that be freelance or another party, that's capable of editing it effectively. There's a lot that goes into technical content. 3, I touched on this a little bit earlier. Make sure you have the tools available to actually measure these results. There's a lot of free ones out there like Google Analytics. But like I said, let's do better than just proving page views when it comes to blog posts. That's not what's going to keep that DevRel position around. That's not what's going to keep that goal within your marketing team. What's going to keep it is being almost thinking like a sales team. You'll notice if you've ever worked at a large organization, sales never has trouble hiring new people. It's because they're able to directly tie the ROI to their efforts. See if you can figure out a way to build it into your site that you're actually able to prove sales via your content marketing efforts. See if you're able to tie it to other goals. Like we said, lowering customer service calls is a great one. Free trial signups, downloads. Take that next step in your evaluation and make sure you have the tools to do it. 4, make sure the buy-in is there from leadership. This is may seem simple, but align the goals of these technical content efforts with what your leadership is currently interested in. It'll make it a lot easier to impress them when you've put it in front of them down the road when you get to the end of the project. Make sure you're matching up with your customer profile, particularly with promotion. Make sure you're hitting your customers that are actually at this very, basic marketing point. But it goes back to the idea of like, don't just do content marketing and splatter it wherever. Know where your customers most likely are at. Know which subreddits they're hiding in. Know where to target them at. And then payback period, this goes back to timeline. When are you expecting to express that ROI internally to your organization, to your leaders, to your investors? Have that set identified date to when you expect to see a return on your investment. So next up is build a promotional strategy. This, unfortunately, I think is the one that gets lost in the mix most often because so much effort has to go into actually creating the content itself that by the time you get to a finished piece, you're thinking to yourself, all right, let's just get this out there. We're already behind. We need to just get this in front of people as quickly as possible and just hope for the best. that is obviously probably the worst thing you can do. Derek Halpern of Unmissable Articles, a regularly big name in the content marketing space and blogging space, very experienced in what our organization does specifically, building technical content. He says spend 80% of your time in content production and actual promotion phase. I know that seems like a lot. I know that seems crazy, but that is truly where you're going to see the ROI on content. And we often say, depending on what your goals are, now this can change depending on if your goals aren't necessarily awareness focused and you're a little bit more specific than that, but you're going to see a lot more success to your content if you crank out B+ level content for a very consistent extended period of time. So like every other day, 2 times a week, once a week. But as long as you're consistent and cranking out that B+ content, you're going to see it, and promoting that content consistently, you're going to see a lot more success in your Google search rankings and all that fun stuff than if you're cranking out that A+ article once a month, or you're doing one week and then you do another in 6 weeks, and you do another in 4 weeks, and you do another in 10 weeks. That consistency and promotion and creation and putting most of your effort into that is going to drive a lot more success for you, at least initially. So match your promotional strategy with your content strategy. Don't bank on going on luck or going viral. Define what success means. Is going to be essential to showing your ROI, but your promotional plan will be invaluable to reaching those goals that you set to define your success. Like we said before, spend just as much time on the promotional strategy as you did on the actual content strategy, and make sure you're going to the right places to actually achieve those goals. So there's lots of promotional blog promotion checklists out there. We have our own. I'll share it in my additional resources after the call. But as you follow the marketing channel here of long-term value versus faster ROI, there are specific channels that tend to achieve those most effectively. Enabling sales, you're going to be best putting your efforts, the content that's meant to achieve those efforts, into the specific Slack groups, your own personal newsletters going out to your customer base, your support emails, those things where you're already speaking to people that are highly invested in your organization. Similar to improving engagement, although that's where you can sort of start hitting the middle area, where you can start reaching out to the subreddits that are in line with your content. One thing that we don't see enough of in general in our industry is taking advantage of syndication sites, third-party sites. It's free, it's easy, it's public. It's a second opportunity for you to post your article. We never see enough of it. The greatest example of that in our eyes is Medium. We have a case study on our site of a great former client of ours who just saw like a 400% increase in their audience base by putting their articles on Medium instead of just on their own personal blog. Take advantage of those syndication sites for improving engagement. Works great for awareness too. Some other recommendations we have once you get up to the awareness level, have your company and your everyone on your team hitting the socials. Even here at Draft.dev, we have a new blog post come out. Everyone on our team is posting that article within their own private groups. Make sure you're hitting Twitter heavy. Make sure you're hitting the, like I said, appropriate subreddits. Hacker News, another great source of that. Another super underrated one for building awareness, getting ranked high in Google, is building those internal and external backlinks. This is a hard one. It takes a lot of investment. It's time investment. It's easier with a large team, but it is super, super, super effective. Make those relationships you need to on the internet with other organizations to build out backward links to your own articles. Do it internally within your own articles themselves. Anytime we release an article on our own blog, we usually link back to 3 or 4 of our own previous articles that we've written. Always an effective method for driving a lot of success on that front. Some other things that we've seen a lot of our clients do is recording video summaries of articles, sharing that, doing paid ads, retargeting. That's all obviously great for awareness. But the long story, the short here is identifying the channels that are going to be best for those specific goals that we see on this slide here. And then repeat. consistency and promotion is your best friend. And like I said, we love creating high quality content at Draft.dev, but consistency is the real winner here. Just make sure you're consistent in production and in promotion. Other points to consider here is ideally your promotional plan is a little different for each type of content you're producing. If you're blessed to be a large organization with a large budget, you may have multiple goals. If you have different, it probably means you have different content for each one of those kinds of goals. You need to have a different kind of promotional strategy for each of those too. This is something that you think that our industry wouldn't struggle with, but sometimes it gets forgotten. Have a solid understanding of how website traffic works. Do your Google research, know how you rank high in Google, know how you drive viewership to your page, know how you drive engagement within articles themselves. It's going to make it a lot easier for you to set your promotional strategy. Set reasonable expectations. This one is critical, and we see a lot of over-promising, under-delivering a lot of times when it comes to awareness specifically. It takes a while to get to where you're ranking above your competitors, you're ranking top for a keyword, and you're getting to the top of that Google page. It takes a few months. We find typically like 6 months, unless you get lucky and have an article go viral, to really get to where you're getting consistent high engagement numbers on your content. And then last but not least, don't forget to review and improve. Don't just let it out there, send the report to your boss that we did great and leave it at that. Bring it all back around full circle, okay? Tracking and iterating, make sure you put in the effort to understand what worked. Some of the essentials here: Google Analytics, Search Console, email capture, have a CRM, have social scheduling to make all this easier. A lot of these applications are free. We all know about them. Sometimes it just gets lost in the mix, like I said, and then next thing you know, you're supposed to be reporting to your boss. You don't have the numbers in front of you. Make sure you're putting in the effort here to use all these tools. You can also, we highly recommend diving into like some true keyword research via Ahrefs is a great tool that I often use a lot. And then actual user tracking, you can use an organization like Hotjar, does a great job of that. And then when it comes to actually how do you improve, what we find is just have a schedule to regularly update your content. We're in a space where things change rapidly. Something that was put out 6 months ago is probably wildly out of date by now. So just make sure you have a strategy in place to update your content. Make sure you're constantly changing that strategy to adapt to the latest in your space. Constantly be like, just have an idea board, whether it's your Trello or something like that, to just drop topics or ideas to write about in the future. So like I said, the longer that topic list you have is, the easier it is going to be to crank out consistent content over a period of time. Don't forget to re-promote pieces. You never know what topic is going to become hot again. And if you're cranking out a lot of content, you probably have something that's hitting whatever's trending on Twitter at that point in time. And then remove the irrelevant pieces. If there's that piece that just bombs, and it happens, I mean, you can't predict it sometimes. There's no need to keep it around on the site. Get rid of the clutter, make it easy for your user base to get to the interesting content. And then repeat this monthly or quarterly. Just have a schedule for yourself to go through these steps. And we find that you will have a very much more successful technical content effort than a lot of the organizations out there. So thank you for listening to me ramble today, everyone. Clayton Kast, here's my LinkedIn information and my email. I'm going to share a lot of additional resources on LinkedIn after this call. If you'd like to dive into any of these topics a little bit more, along with a couple of case studies from some of our specific clients. But we're going to open it up to Q&A now. And be joined by my buddy Matt, who is our lead content consultant here at Draft.dev.
Yes, and thank you, Clayton. There are a few questions. One of them was to share your slides, and we're already going to be doing that. We are sharing all the recordings with everyone following the session. And then there is one question. If we have some topics we think are interesting / emerging, but not seeing a lot of data on them in Ahrefs, is it still worth creating?
Yeah, I'll give a little bit on this, and Matt, you may have a little bit more here. that's one of those things where it sort of like goes back to the old marketing concepts of A/B testing. If it's not trending yet on Ahrefs, that may just mean that someone hasn't touched on it yet. I would recommend, go with the safe stuff first. If you already have good user base, good viewership, good engagement, I'd recommend, particularly if you're one of those products that we have some clients that literally there's just not even enough documentation sometimes to write the content they want to write about. If you're one of those, why not be the first out there and get a piece out on it? That's how I feel about it. Anything to add there, Matt?
Yeah, so while it's always nice to have some data in Ahrefs, it's always good to remember that those are not perfect tools. At the end of the day, they're kind of lagging, they're recording, and particularly in this space where it's a lot of nascent subject matter, if you know that it's going to be emerging, that can in fact be a great place to invest because you're getting out ahead of the pack. You're getting one of those first pieces of content, especially if it's a really good deep dive. Establishing that early ranking, it can be something that's really valuable to hold on. Like Clayton said, I wouldn't put all your eggs in that basket, but ultimately you and your team probably know your space pretty well. So I would definitely invest at least a few articles there. The other thing to keep in mind and we hear this feedback when people work with less technical, more generic SEO agencies, is they can get topic suggestions because it looks like there's minimal competition and good volume, but what happens is the terms are deprecated, it's not going to be valuable content, and so it wouldn't be a good place to invest. So at the end of the day, the tools are just that. Use your own subject matter expertise to kind of vet what the tool says and go from there.
Thank you both. Looking at the questions, I think there is one that you already kind of answered, but I felt like you kind of tried to rush through that slide because of the time. Oh, so you might want to share something extra. One
Sure.
of the questions was around the most effective promotional channels for articles. And you had that great slide on it. Maybe you have a few more examples that you wanted to share in case.
Yeah, I could probably talk an hour on this alone, and I highly recommend checking out some of the content that I'll share after, and it'll be linked out in our deck too. It honestly, and this is the answer everyone hates getting, particularly on calls like this, it is highly dependent upon what you're trying to promote. But I would say if there's one point when it comes to sources that I think is most underrated, it's syndication. Take advantage of those free sites with large user bases that are just itching at the bit to read something new. But the specific sites themselves really going to come down to what your organization does and what those individual goals are. Awareness, you're going to go for those big name sites. If you are a very specific product that works within a very specific technology or specific language, we see subreddits to be highly effective. It's something that we even make within our own personal recommendations to clients. We'll dig up some subreddits for them to post within. And then obviously Twitter is a very great place. So for both awareness and specificity on both of those fronts. But like I said, this is a talk in and of itself. And I'll share a couple of articles that we have from our own personal blog where you can dive into the details on some of the specific venues that we think are most effective, including a list of syndication sites, just so you don't have to go Google hunting. Anything to add there, Matt?
Yeah, a couple thoughts there. One thing I've seen be highly effective is Slack and Discord groups that they're not necessarily huge volume, but there's a lot of small niche dedicated ones like DevOps, data engineers, that sort of thing. And obviously be mindful of there's, promotional vendor sort of things, be tactful. A lot of them will have a specific channel for it, but let's say you go in there and see someone who's struggling with something and you just happen to create a tutorial on that, at that point, you can kind of DM them and it's pretty safe to say, as long as you're actively helping them, they're not going to be upset. The other thing, and it's not exactly a promotional channel, but co-marketing is huge. There's so many clients we work with where they'll double up on an article, our product works great with so-and-so's, and then you get the benefit of both companies' networks. So join DevMarketing, DevRel Slack groups and network with people in your space. There's a lot of companies where they're not competitors, but both products kind of support each other. And that's a great opportunity to get increased exposure for both of you.
we'll see that within our own client base a lot. They don't understand that we work with both of them, and we get to have the joy of connecting the two of them. But yeah, highly underrated. Good point, Matt.
Okay, we have a few more questions. Who do you consider best in class for content? Any companies you see as best practice leaders?
Ooh, there's a few, and we all have our favorites. I mean, obviously the big names kill it just because they have the money to invest in it. AWS always has a great batch of content cranking out. Anything Google related, they're usually doing a pretty solid job. DigitalOcean, Medium, just in general, to get a large variety of stuff. I know I keep saying that over and over again, but don't just because you heard it before and you've been there, don't look over it. Matt, I'm sure you have a few favorites of your own too.
Yeah, I feel like DigitalOcean really comes to mind just because they really spearheaded not just like the content marketing, but the community-driven approach, something that we personally feel very strongly about, you know, giving developers within the community a voice to publish technical content. Twilio, Kinsa, a few names that come to mind. I mean, there's just a lot of really impressive companies out there. Feel free to DM me or connect with me on LinkedIn after if you got more questions. I always love to chat about this stuff.
Okay, and then two more. We have 3 minutes. I think we can get through it. One of them is around, Clayton, you said that people should repost articles on sites like LinkedIn, but they've heard that posting duplicate articles gets penalized by Google. Is that a concern?
We haven't seen that on our own personal end, and Google, we always say the lords that be or the gods that be over at Google, they love to be not very specific exactly about how all those algorithms work. It almost becomes rumor a lot of times on what's effective and what isn't. There are some best practices, like I said, just general consistency. But personally, I haven't found any harm and oftentimes benefit in resharing. And even more so to take that concept to the next level. Like I said, I would focus even more so on generating backlinks, both internally within your own blog and externally. But yeah, definitely get them on your social channels.
We usually wait a couple of weeks to post, and we'll use like a canonical link when we're republishing elsewhere. The other thing you can do on LinkedIn is also take a little bit of time to rework that content into a platform native piece as well. There's a lot of different ways you can distribute the content on LinkedIn aside from just dropping the link in there. So you can get creative with it, and then it ends up not being an identical piece either. You know, add a hook, add a way for your audience there to really engage with you and start a conversation.
That's a solid point that we go to talk about promotion could be a talk in of itself. Maybe next year, if we get invited back, we'll just focus in on that. For Matt, oftentimes will, if he's in a relevant chat on LinkedIn and in a comment space where something comes up that's relevant to one of our blog posts, he'll drop the link in there to it. And it's an honest attempt to educate people, but it's also driving engagement into that link. The little things like that. And like Matt said, using a scheduler, don't just blast that article on all channels at the same time at the same hour.
Yeah, one thing for me, I work on the sales side, and it's super helpful to have content that is created around objections, questions, that sort of thing, where you just have a really well formatted response, you know, instead of kind of having to refresh it every time. You just have a resource, especially where you're selling something technical. It's super handy to give a sales rep some additional support that's written by a subject matter expert to just very concisely go over that.
Great, thank you both. Maybe a last very quick question. It's to you, Clayton, personally, around your Twitter account, given that you mentioned Twitter several times, but who asked this question couldn't find you on Twitter. And if you are not there, they're wondering why you are not there.
Yeah, that's between me and my therapist. I made the personal decision to move away from social media for my own life, but it is still a very effective marketing tool. For businesses, for business purposes, I tend to hang out on LinkedIn, but we do use our own Draft.dev Twitter profile very effectively.
Great. Thank you both. We managed to finish just on time. And now we are moving to our next session. Obviously, you already know that we won't be doing the workshop that Tessa was supposed to do for us today, but we have an amazing community. So we managed to keep on track and organize a panel on the same topic. So we will have Moskula with us to host the panel. And I pass it over to Moskula to introduce the surprise speakers and kick off.